Hi, everybody. Welcome to the June 2018 edition of the Paul Crouse Show here on the Star Nations Radio Network, although it's not radio anymore. I think we're going to call this talk show Talk Network. I don't know. Anyway, we talked, and on our show here, we talking to a broad range of guests about living life better and making a difference in our rapidly changing world. So today, again, we're talking with my good friend and psychiatric nurse practitioner, Frances Robbins. Hi, Frances.
Howdy, how's it going?
It's going good. Just before we get along here, let me go to my little intro thingy.
Okay.
By the way, the title of our show today is Staying Sane in Our Crazy World. Those are supposed to be quotation marks. Knowing if people do it all the time, but we'll do it. So just real quick, before we go into this, let me talk a bit about myself. My name's Paul Crouse. I'm a spiritual teacher, advisor, and life coach based here in Kyoto, Japan. I help people who want to change their lives for the better. So if you want to contact me, if you want to make some changes, or I also do like readings and advisory for people, please contact me on my website, which is paulcrouse.com. That's Crouse. You can see the spelling if you're seeing this on Facebook. My name's written around there. Just click on that and send me an email, and we can go from there. And if you get a chance, get a chance to listen to some of the other shows we have here on the Star Nations Network. Just go to starnations.org and you can find the other shows and a bunch of other great content. Make sure to stick around after this show to see Julie Hedges' Tarot Journey show. So, without further ado, it's Frances. Hi, Frances.
Howdy.
And where are you again today? You're in
I'm in
Salem,
Oregon.
Salem,
Oregon. Yes.
All right.
The capital of Oregon in the United States.
The capital of Oregon in the United States.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Oregon is in the United States, and Salem is the capital of Oregon.
Okay.
Sorry.
No.
It was a test.
I don't need to be in English. Sure.
You've been places.
Yeah. Well, no. I was kind of anyway.
And Oregon sits right on top of California and below Washington, near Canada.
That is, if you choose to have the map with north on the top. Anyway, I think we're going really. So the title of our show is Staying Sane in Our Crazy World. We're going to watch this go a little bit nuts, insane. So how are you? So are you doing well?
I am doing well. It's a little chilly here today. So I had my jacket on.
What's chilly mean to you?
Well, it's about 20.
Centigrade or Fahrenheit?
Centigrade. I had to sit here and do the math real quick. But
what is what you say? I think most of our listeners know the Fahrenheit more than.
Well, we have times when it's down in the 60s, and then it goes and it's in the 80s, and then but it's cold. It's just chilly today. At least it is where I'm at. I'm cold.
I know a couple months ago you're like upper 60s. It's like, whoa, it's really hot. So amazing. We had a pretty strong earthquake yesterday morning at like 2 minutes to 8 a.m., which is for most people it's rush hour in Metro Osaka. I live in Kyoto, which is a part of Metro Osaka and Kobe. It's a megalopolis in Japan. Thank you. About 14 million people live in this neck of the woods. And it was a 6.1. So it was I've never really been in that's a pretty strong quake. And it wasn't very far from here either. It was just maybe between 15 and 20 miles away, halfway between Osaka and Kyoto. So it was pretty strong. Wow. It woke me up, quite well, not just waking up, but also waking up, it's that
I know
the reality of yes, there's more going on in the the Earth is much larger than we are.
Where were you at? Were you walking or were you on your house?
I was in bed sleeping
at 8 in the morning.
At 8 in the morning, yes.
I'm trying not to judge you.
I'm more of a night person, all right?
That's like the middle of my day. Well, I the first time I was in an earthquake was in DC, Washington, DC. And I'd never felt an earthquake before that I was aware of. And I was in a high-rise apartment building. And I really thought that like a truck had hit the building or something, as ridiculous that sounds. It's like a 12-story building and everything was starting. And I thought, did a truck hit the building?
Did a truck hit the building? Well, yeah, it kind of feels like that, because sometimes when I have trucks that go up past my house, we have a little bit older wooden house, and it does feel like it shakes. But here it's sort of like, I don't know, like Paul Bunyan standing outside with a huge stick and hits the house with it really hard and shakes it. And then
I felt so vulnerable. Did you feel vulnerable? I mean, there's nothing you can do. Or you just ride it. You're just laying there in the bed thinking,
I jumped
having
up
an earthquake.
Grab things and, put on some, like, my jeans and...
just in case.
Run downstairs. I mean, just to get... Well, because if I got to get outside, I got to get outside, right? So,
right.
I was throwing my sleeping clothes and so...
Wow.
Anyway, it was pretty... yeah. So
was there any damage that was done out there? Did everything fare okay?
As earthquakes go, it was relatively. I mean, it was a big deal. I mean, the whole like all the trains stopped and everything. There wasn't a huge amount of damage. No, it wasn't like Kobe and 95, which was or Fukushima, which is. So this was a 6.1. So I can't. And we've been having some aftershocks like in the middle of the night. There were like 3 of them, which is just like when you're sleeping, it's a pretty strong earthquake. But this is nothing like for Fukushima, that was a 9.0. That was like one of the largest ever. That's like a huge amount. And that went on for 5 minutes.
Oh,
and then
wow.
Then every 15 minutes after that, they had so many aftershocks. My friends in Tokyo actually ended up coming staying with us because they couldn't sleep, because every 15 minutes, it's like a 7.0 aftershock. So that was very intense.
Wow.
I didn't actually live through that, but I mean, here we didn't feel any of it. But anyway.
Well, I'm glad you're okay and everything was somewhat uneventful.
Yeah, and I'm actually really glad that I wasn't stuck in a train, rush hour train for hours like a lot of folks were, because usually Japanese trains are jam-packed.
Oh, I know.
They just stop there. They can't move them. And so sometimes they let people off the tracks if they're near a station. But if they're not, you have to wait till they move the trains. Anyhow, well, let's put up our name. So we're going to talk about how to stay sane in our so-called crazy world. Oh, that's our names. So what is sanity, Francis? You're a psychiatric nurse practitioner. So is there an actual definition of sanity?
I'm sure there is. I don't know I don't know the Webster's off the top of my head, but I would tell you that sanity is really defined in the norms of where you are. What are your cultural norms, and what is acceptable? We can have. There's some cultures where if you talk to things that nobody else can see, and you hear things that other people don't hear, that would still be considered sane. And there's some cultures that if you start talking to things that nobody else can see and hearing things that nobody else can hear, people would think that you are insane. So I think it has a lot to do with your culture and what's going on, what's the norms around you. So I would challenge most everybody when it comes to sanity or not. But for what I look at for clinically is, does the person do they have a foothold in reality? Do they know, are they safe to themselves? Are they safe to other people? Are they able to make a competent decision without causing harm? That's kind of what I look at when I say
reality. That's a pretty interesting way of saying it. There's a Zen Buddhist priest who I know here, Taka Kawakami at the Shunkoin Temple here in Kyoto. Younger guy. He's on if you go to my talk show page on my website, I did an hour show with him. And he's been recently been using the word he talks about reality and actuality, because one way of looking at the world is our reality, our personal reality is what we perceive it to be, as opposed to what he's using the word actuality, what exists in the universe around us, what actually exists. So how much of our, and so he's talking about Zen Buddhism. So he's talking about, well, being in the present moment and observing. In Zen Buddhism, a lot of it is being in the present moment. You observe the world as it is, not the way that you want it to be. And then you make choices about, you make choices. What you want to do something, or you don't want to do something, you want to take actions, and so forth. So the root point, and so a lot of the modern mindfulness stuff comes from that, where you want to be in actuality, which I think is actually a good word, because reality, if we're so-called insane, we perceive what our world is because of our belief system, right? Of our culture. You're talking about the cultures,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. That's exactly correct.
So you're talking about Salem. So when you say the word Salem, I think of the Salem witch trials or whatever.
Sure.
So in those days, how people viewed reality was very different than the way that we view reality. So if someone was accused of being a witch, that was, what that means is different to them than it is to us, correct? As I get there right when she's drinking the water, as I ask the question.
I'm sorry, I just really want to cough really bad.
Are you okay?
Yes, I'm okay.
All right. Do you want to step away, or?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
But I think that we were saying that was correct about the witches and the witch trial, and that whole, excuse me, how if there's a perception, if the community thinks one way and you think differently, the person who's in power, the group that's in power, is going to have control over the outcome, or whatever you're thinking. I'm so sorry, Paul.
No, it's okay. No,
Let me just get some more water.
Yeah,
Can you just talk to everybody?
I'm gonna go solo for a moment. Just tell me when you're back.
Okay.
Right, solo. So, Francis has stepped away for a moment. Back when I was in school at the University of Wisconsin, I had a class called Religion and Magic, and I had a professor, Susanna Lloyd. It was actually one of the few professors' names I actually remember, and she was an anthropologist. And she was talking about people with schizophrenia. And when Francis comes back, I'll ask her a little bit more about schizophrenia. Oh, there's Francis again.
All righty, I am back.
I'm going to go off the solo mode, and I'm going to hide our names there.
Sorry about that.
There was, as I was mentioning, as I was filling in the airtime with Francis not being here, when I was in university, I had a class called Religion and Magic, and it was an anthropology class, and the professor, her name was Susanna Lloyd. She was actually known as the witch on the campus at University of Wisconsin at La Crosse, and she was a Wiccan. Anyway, during one of her classes, she was talking about what we're talking about, what is reality. And she was talking about people that were schizophrenic. And so so if the person is hearing voices and actually talking with someone in front of them, the question is, one is that you could say that, okay, they have mental illness, and that they're just talking to these invisible things, and they're not very, as you say, don't really have a good foothold in reality, or here we're talking about actuality. She goes, or they could be talking to somebody, they could be talking to something that we can't perceive, that maybe their mind is tuned a little bit differently, and that they can perceive reality different than we can. And then she's like, which is true? And she's like,
right. I think it becomes a problem when people feel threatened, or if that person who's having those experiences puts themselves in danger.
Okay.
Or puts other people in danger.
Okay. Or maybe can't So schizophrenia is a very specific and very serious mental illness, correct?
Oh,
So,
yes, yes.
yes. So let's step back from that. That's sort of like using the extreme for an example, but let's come back to, we'll say, people that are, we'll say, typical. I guess when people talk about someone who's like, well, autistic people will talk about themselves being atypical, but just regular average,
regular guy.
regular average folks, not people on the extremes of the spectrum. But
Right.
so being insane. So I know from my past, I've had times where I was not very, not feeling very good, especially like right when I came to the point of quitting drinking. I kind of felt like I came about this close to going totally bloody crazy. It seemed like my mind a lot of times was going around and around and around, and had a lot of circular thoughts and so forth. And then I guess you would say I had anxiety because I was always going to my fears and so forth. And so my way of dealing with it was just to get drunk. But that just became unsustainable. And fortunately, I took action and sobered out. Mm-hmm. So is that kind of a way that a lot of folks, maybe not insanity, but becoming, I don't know, what would you call this? Mentally unhealthy, or losing the plot? Or how would we describe this for a lot of folks?
Well, a lot of people will do, whether it's alcohol or cigarettes or food or random drugs, or whether they're prescribed or whether they're something just bought on their own, to what we call self-medicate, to help themselves work through whatever that is. Okay. In your case, typically, I'm just using a generalization. Alcoholics, when they are sobering up, it takes about 5 years for the brain to really heal. And the time closest to when they actually started the sobriety, there's a high level anxiety, and it's really their brain is pickled or bathed in this alcohol, that it takes a while for the brain to actually heal. And so there is something that's alcohol-induced anxiety, or anxiety due to alcoholism. So it's almost like a dog chasing its tail, in the sense that you have someone who's an alcoholic who starts feeling very anxious. So when they drink, that tapers down the anxiety, so they get more calm. But that drinking causes them to want more, causes them to become more anxious, which they drink more to help taper down the anxiety. It really is like this little vortex in a tornado, it just kind of goes round and round and round. So I think what can happen in just typical, normal, the average person who fits within the standards of their cultural norms, when maybe something traumatic happens, or something happens to them where they don't feel like they are have the self-worth that maybe they once did, or once they believed they had, I think that's when they can start looking at ways to self-medicate. So the depression and the anxiety portion happens, and then they'll start doing things. But I think in our world, it's so easy for people, because unfortunately, we're almost too connected. Now, I make a living on the internet, and I make a living doing therapy online. So I value being online. But I know we've talked about this before, Paul, but you can listen, and you can try to fit into people's lives that you think that they have a better life than your own, and people will start comparing, and then in the end result is that they feel like they're the ones who are not doing very well, that they can't compete with all these other people, when the truth is we all have the same foundational set of smartness, and we all are able to do a lot of the same things. And when people who sit around in their misery, they're miserable, and maybe they're really negative, they really bring that almost like a magnet onto themselves. And what I really like to try to get my clients to do, and people who are just in a horrible, miserable state, instead of self-medicating or trying to make those things go away, really start changing their mindset. So where they start thinking about things that bring them joy, things that they like, things, really start listening and talking to themselves about how they really are a pretty special person. And the whole positive affirmations and speaking what you want to have happen, I think there's a lot of value in that. So when I see people who are kind of struggling, I really look at what's coming into your mind, right? What are you bringing into your mind? You sit around and talk, and are you just miserable and moan and groan all the time? Because that's what you're bringing into your mind, and that's what's going to be attracted to you. And I mean, we've all heard the saying, misery loves company,
Well, I wrote in with what you said there. I have a whole bunch of questions to follow up on. No, there's quite a bit that you talked about. Let me just jump back to something you said earlier. You talked about like an alcoholic, his brain is pickled, and you said it took 5 years for the brain to heal. Now you're talking about the physical brain itself.
I'm talking about the physical brain itself. We know now from research, studying and doing different scans on people's brains, what that looks like, what a healthy brain looks like. And on average, it's about 5 years.
So just so I can grasp this and other people can grasp it, it's just like if you injured part of your skin, our skin is really easy to see, right?
Or a fractured leg.
Huh? Excuse me?
A fractured leg, like you break your leg.
Yeah, it takes time to heal. So the brain itself, the physical structure of the brain, because of the chemicals that we're ingesting, whether it's here we're talking about alcohol, but it could be something like cocaine, or it could be something like sugar or unhealthy food. The brain itself, the structure of it physically changes, and therefore affects the mental process. Correct? Yes.
And usually that's manifested with anxiety, honestly.
Okay.
Alcoholics are typically more anxious than they are depressed.
Okay. Well, because it's a depressant, right? Okay. So therefore, but I mean, just in general, it's sometimes I'm always amazed how much of the, like my feeling and my thought processes is so connected to the physical body. And actually when I'm working with my clients, I tend to think more about the energy stuff and the energy work with it, but to remember that our physical being is core to all of this. From this spiritual kind of point of view, it's your life is your soul and your body together right now, intersected together at this point in time. And so that that there was a time before you were born, that your soul wasn't in your body, and there will be another time that your soul won't be in your body, but it is right now. And that the physicality of this, the strength of your spirit, the strength of your beingness, a large part of it has to do with your physical health, but also has a lot to do with your mindset and your, how do I say this? A lot of times the spiritual practices, simply put, make us stronger, brightens our light from the inside. But there's the whole, it's actually, we talk about mind, body, spirit, that's all one thing. We just have to talk about it. We have to separate them out, because as humans we need to just understand stuff. It's kind of difficult to grasp if we don't break it down. So that physicality.
Right. And I would tell you that what generates as a thought can be manifested in a physical reaction. So you can have a fearful thought of something that hasn't happened. You just have a fear of something, and that fear can be can be noted in your physical body by panic, having a panic attack. And you can also have a thought that is a very exciting and hopeful, enthusiastic, or exciting and hopeful thought, and it's manifested in enthusiasm.
Okay. Sure. So I actually just wrote a story for the Star Nations magazine about during, I won't go through the story too much, but it was talking about during the Fukushima earthquake, and I was sitting in my home, and we were physically far away from there, but it was a really stressful time, and I was rationally thinking through all of this. We're far away, we'll be okay where we are. And then I actually read something online, a New York Times story that was saying basically the people at the energy company and the government people were freaking out because they didn't know what to do, because stuff was falling apart around them. Mm-hmm. And just reading one sentence, which I felt like I got punched in the solar plexus in the gut. Mm-hmm. And then I felt this like fiery fear just go over my whole body. And I went from being okay to this fearful state.
Right.
And then in the story, it went on to talk about, ended up meeting this Franciscan nun who, just by her, she's telling her story. It was actually in an English class. She was telling, she wanted to observe my class. I was working at the YWCA at the time, and she wanted to observe my class because she's a Filipina, and she just got transferred to Japan, and she was going to be teaching English classes, and she wanted to see what I did. And the students were asking her about, she's a nun. She wasn't wearing a habit or anything. She's just wearing a white blouse and skirt, and she just talked about what she did, and she talked about St. Francis, and she just radiated this love. And it was just like, as she was talking, I just like that fear that it just like melted away. And actually, had I not been teaching the class, I would have been going, ah! But I was like, had to hold that together because
no, that's
nonetheless, it was just, both of those things were just thoughts. Although with her, there was, I think, more going on, that energetic thing from her, because she wasn't saying anything particularly profound. She was just radiating this love. And it's difficult to describe really what love is until you see it, experience it, feel it. Because we talk about love a lot in culture, and like pretty much every, I don't know, I think most love songs are kind of like, I want to be your codependent baby. I don't know. But this was, she was, so just the thought, the power that it has over our physical bodies sometimes is just mind-blowing. So we were talking about, you talked about affirmations. Yeah. So isn't from the way I look at it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that so a lot of our brain is, the way we think, a lot of it is just programming from all the things that we've learned from childhood, yes? And a lot of it is that Pavlovian response stuff. So a lot of the way we think is simply habit. Some of it comes from just our culture, and some of it comes from our personal experience in our family, yeah? But we have these certain thoughts that we like go on autopilot.
Right.
And this is something like an affirmation, a way of using a computer code. Like imagine everything in our head is like a computer code. We're overwriting that computer code with something else by consciously speaking and physically talking about it. Would that be an accurate description?
I think that's a very good description. Basically, when we all have habits, and I would venture to say more of us are on a habit mode than we are really critically thinking what we're doing. For example, if you drive to the office every day, or you drive to take your kids to school, or you're driving, you do whatever, you're going through this normal routine of your day, you may find that you've been in the car driving for 10 minutes, but you can't remember, or you don't really have any memory about if you stopped at that stoplight, if you what the cars around you were doing.
I remember that.
Because we're just on this autopilot. Well, that's the habit. And in our minds, we can do that as well. We can think things. We can naturally go to a place of fear and worry, because that's kind of what we have been programmed, you know. And think about when you were a kid. I mean, I think we can all relate to having that first opportunity on a bicycle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how many adult people were around you saying, be careful, don't fall. You're going to fall. Be careful. Be careful. Oh my, slow down. You're going too fast. Right. And like getting you all scared. And maybe not even letting you fall down. Maybe they were right there next to you. Oh, I can't let you fall. Right.
Oh, that's actually was my experience. It was my older brother, and he was just getting really annoyed and yelling at me for falling over. But anyway, I know what you're saying.
No, I mean, we can get these things in our head, or when I was going to school, it was in high school, it was all about having good grades so that I could go to college and get a good job and go work for a company and sit at that company's office or do a company job for the rest of my adult life while I'm working. And I could do that by having good education. So there's all this pressure about education. Well, that's just a way of thinking. And so you kind of get in that habit of thinking certain things have to go in a certain order. And so when maybe you get a failing grade, or you don't get accepted into college, or you don't get that job at the wherever company, you can start feeling all those bad things that everybody kind of said could happen. You can easily go into a fear mode and thinking, okay, I must be, these things, bad things are going to happen. And you can get all worked up and worried and anxious when it's all based off of kind of a habit or a thought that's been kind of programmed in our head when we were younger. You have to do these things. You have to do these things.
Yeah, the belief system, yeah.
Yes, so, the whole belief system.
Well, I'm going to come back to that in just a moment, because I think that's one of the big things, especially with the internet and so forth. We get sort of stuck in a certain belief area, and then...
Yeah. So I think you have to that's why I love to travel and go into other cultures and see how other people do things, and realize how silly some of the things I do that I would have thought, I was doing correctly. Till I came to Japan, it never occurred to me to take off my shoes before I went into a room. And I never thought about it. And I wouldn't have thought anything about, in the States, we wear our shoes inside. We wear our shoes in the bathroom and then walk around our house. Now
and on the couch, or, oh my God, in the bed.
That is like super nasty in Japan.
The rationality of it here is, A, most of the time in Japan, people sit on the floor. And B, you don't know what you've been stepping in out there, and then we're going to sit in that. I mean, especially in the old days when there was horses and dog poo and probably whatever on the street.
Well, yeah. No, I get it. I get it. But in the beginning, I thought, this is really inconvenient. This is really inconvenient for me to have to take off my shoes to go inside a house. Like, that's odd. But it's all my belief system.
Exactly. And we all I'm having an over 50 moment here. There's a phrase in anthropology where you talk about cultural
bias.
Anyway, talking about no, not a cultural bias, but there's a specific phrase, but it has to do with, we think that the world is relative, right? So we can only judge things based upon our own belief system. Excuse me?
Egocentric?
No, I'll come to it in a moment. It's just one of those things. We'll talk about it later. But basically, we think our culture is the greatest, and we compare all the other cultures. It's just it's a normal human bias that there's ethnocentricity. It's called, actually.
There you go. There you go.
All those anthropology classes in school. So let's jump to being a little bit of practicality here, and I want to come back to. I'm looking at the time, but the other thing I want to come to after we talk about this is to talk about. We're talking about mindset, but also how we deal with information in the world, and where we You know, if we sit online all day ingesting negativity, yeah, of course we're going to feel like crap. And then we hang out with our friends and we all blah, blah, blah. But before we get there, I want to talk about affirmations. And first I'm going to bring this book up for people. This is Louise Hay, as in Hay House. Love Yourself, Heal Your Life. This is the workbook, but the book itself is amazing. I highly recommend this. This is basically how to reprogram yourself. And she started Hay House Books. So anybody who does into the spiritual stuff, that's like the largest spiritual publishing house in the world. And she started this company from writing her book when she was in her 60s. So for all these people like, oh, my life is horrible, I'm 45 and I'll never, you know, your life can totally change. And as she does.
Yes.
So the very first affirmation she talks about is you look in the mirror and you just say to yourself, I love and accept myself just the way that I am. I love and accept myself just the way that I am. I love and accept myself just the way that I am. And in her book, she talks about how that's usually how one of the first things she gets her clients to do. And she's like, talks about many clients, they like freak out on this. They can't do it, or they get really angry, or she gets through all these examples of using these affirmations because ultimately here we're talking about love, and love is a many splendored thing. Love is a challenging concept to grasp. It's not as simple as look up the word love in the dictionary. It's one of those words that's really difficult to define because it's that thing we kind of know what it is, but you can't really put your finger on it until you experience it, feel it, smell it. So could you explain a little bit more about affirmations and how we might use those to reprogram our brains?
No, I think that's what I tell my clients as well, is to start off with something simple. And the first thing I tell them is to write it down. So I use the sticky notes, and we write it down on a sticky note, and we put the sticky note in a place that you're going to go to frequently, which is usually the bathroom mirror. So I tell people, like, when you get up in the morning, that's kind of the first thing a person does is they get up and they head to the bathroom. So there's a sticky note on the mirror in the bathroom that says those things. And I tell them also, they don't have to believe it. They just have to read it. And so we read it together in session. I don't really have any particular, I work very hard at not having any particular response to them saying it. It's just a very neutral response to me because it's all about them just actually speaking it. So they read it and they speak it. And so I have them do that. We set up some reasonable goals. How often do you think you can do this? And we start off with something really simple. And something, when I say simple, is that they don't have to believe it. It's just a matter of writing it down. So I love myself. I'm a beautiful person. I have lots of friends. Whatever it is that we come up in that seems appropriate based off of what's going on with them. But they don't have to believe it. That's like the most important thing. They just have to do it. And then when I see them typically I see my clients on a weekly basis. And when I see them, I ask them, how's it going with your affirmations? And then we talk about more affirmations to add to that. And now with smartphones and being able to just put everything on your smartphone and type it out on your notepad, I just have them even take it around with them and do that. Take it and look at it and read it. Over time, what happens is their thinking starts changing and they start believing it. And then we go into gratitude and it morphs into the positive affirmations, but then what are you grateful for? And sometimes the gratitude can be pretty kind of, low on the, I'm grateful that I'm alive. Some people aren't grateful that they're alive. Some people are grateful that their dog or cat is alive or they have a family member. So we start wherever they're comfortable at, and then we grow on the gratitude along with the positive affirmations. And what you see over a period of weeks is this magical transformation that happens because as they become more positive and more self-assured and start believing it, that attracts other people around them to treat them nicer, to want to hang out with them, to affirm what they already are telling themselves that they believe. And really magical things start happening. When you're around a person who's negative, bitter, nasty, rude, hateful, all those things, it sucks your energy, it sucks you dry, and you repel that. You don't want to be around that person.
Yeah, and from the energetic point of view, those people are actually trying to get your energy by that negative thing, and it's just this. They've got this black hole inside that just sucks it all in and doesn't fulfill them. It doesn't fulfill them either.
And I think all of us have experienced that.
Sure.
And we've experienced the other spectrum. The other side of the coin would be a person who's positive, who's smiling, who's pleasant to be around, who always seems to have something very nice to say. And we are more inclined to want to hang out with that person. So if I have a client who presents, or they show up on that first appointment and they're the bitter, mean, nasty, hateful person, and we go through the process of the affirmations and the gratitude exercises, along with just doing our own processing through therapy, over time they transform and they become a really positive person. And then people are attracted to them. And that is magical. That is magical.
And well, actually, magic, it's actually quite simple. This rabbi, I was reading this book about magic and evil and whatever, but he was talking about magic is basically focused intention mixed with sound. So that's why prayers are allowed, because the sound vibrations actually is part of the deal. So focusing, but that focuses our energy. So when the person, so the example of like the Franciscan nun, right? I was around, I went into this negative state from just some information I got, and I was grumpy and then I was just being in the room with this woman, just hearing what she had to say, and then the power she had just, and she wasn't trying, she was just existing and telling her story. It's not like you're kind of coming up to me and actively saying, you're negative, Paul, and we're going to change your attitude.
No.
Creating this light and this peacefulness and this centeredness. So that's where like a lot of the spiritual practices are very similar to the psychological stuff, because it's like centering, and it's in the spiritual way, we're talking about our energy field, our mind, our emotions, our body, the external energies, the internal energies, and how to shield ourselves energetically. But that energy is light energy, but it's also our mental energy, our emotional energy, the energies in the environment.
Oh, sure.
If we're not shielded, if we don't protect ourselves by having, for example, good personal boundaries, or just not getting upset when, that's the Zen thing, is if you're chilled out, the stuff's not gonna move you from that strong center. You might not like what you're witnessing, but it doesn't overwhelm you, and then you don't go into that automatic response mode, and you just have this little extra time to make a choice. And choice is that huge spiritual power. So from the Judeo-Christian thing, God gave you free will. That's you're not a robot, you're not a rock. You get to choose, and that's the spiritual path, and that's how you move up the ladder, so to speak, is that choices. And of course we're going to make wrong choices, because hey, we're human, we're fallible. We're not robots. And of course that's how we learn. Yeah. Anyway.
No, I agree. So what I see, and that I think we have to all be very conscious of this, myself, I can speak expertly on myself because I know myself the best, is I have to be very mindful of what infiltrates me, what comes to me, because I have to be able to give my best to my clients, right? And if I go from one client who's had horrific, horrible trauma, and then I take that energy and that negativity and take it to the next client, that's not very therapeutic. So what I do for myself is I will spend a great deal of time in gratitude and positive affirmations, and filling my mind with things that bring me joy, that I learn from. And I spend a lot of time in meditation as well. And I also, though, have to kind of keep up with what's going on in the world to some extent, because I cannot live under a rock. Maybe at some point in my life I can, but right now it's not going to work for me. I need to be able to have a good handle and understanding of what's happening in the world. And so what I think a lot of people should be doing is maybe have the ability to know what's happening, like whether it's a little soundbite of a news clip, or maybe if you are a person who's big on Facebook or Twitter and you see what's going through the news feed, so you have some awareness of it. But then that's where it ends. There's no point in digging deep and deep. And if you're someone who you think like that's your thing, it's something you're very interested in, you're going to spend some time to dig deep into whatever this situation is, give yourself a time limit. So you're only exposed to that for a period of time. But people who get so caught up in something they have absolutely no control over, and get all worked up and just angry and upset, there's no value in that. Nothing comes of good from that. All that does is hurt them. It doesn't change the situation. It doesn't change the outcome of what's happened. So, for example, with a lot of the suicides that we've had in the United States, they've been unfortunately, it's been increasing, and you have control over yourself, and you have some sort of awareness of what's going around with you. But if you get all worked up because of a celebrity who's passed away, who's committed suicide, and you don't have there's no rationale, there's no reason why you would get so worked up over this, like you get really over the top worked up about it and start thinking that there's all these problems in the world and why is this happening? You can become almost fanatical in that thinking. And with that, if you're not doing things to kind of protect your own mental wellness, you can become depressed and upset and even thinking
Sure.
about suicide.
Sure. I actually want to talk a little bit about this, because I see there's a bit of a conundrum. I used to be a journalist, and I actually know quite a bit about politics and am interested in politics. Remembering that politics is about power, who has power, who doesn't have power, what institutions have power, what people have power, and the power dynamics, which is this energy flow stuff. And so I know a lot of people that are just totally obsessed with politics, and
yes,
and they get overwhelmed with it. And I have a blog post here. It says, "The world is better now than it's ever been in history, but I bet you don't believe it." And for the average human being who's alive right now, the situation for the average human being right now is better than it's ever been in all of human history and prehistory. I mean,
I believe that.
People, the availability of food,
right?
How most of the great plagues.
We're living longer.
And we're talking about like more people have been risen out of absolute total crap poverty since the financial crisis in 2008 than any other time in history. Okay, there's so many things you can go down the list, and a lot of these changes happen. The positive things happen was because people observed that there were problems in the world, and they took action upon it. And some of these actions take a long time, might take generations for things to happen, but simple steps like the plight of women, that the status of women in the world is much better than it's ever been. Yes, so then usually when I say something like this, people jump back into but it's this. They always go back to the positive because that's what they're reinforced about. Because if you look on the political stuff, whether it's right or left, they're right and the left are always seizing on this. This is what the problem is. These are all the problems, and it's all horrible.
Right.
Side. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not going to be neutral. I have a political stance, and I also think that some of the people that are taking power right now are really not good. It's important for us to be able to take a stand on certain things, but
I agree.
But not to get obsessed about it, or to do the Zen Buddhist thing is we don't want to be Pollyanna from hell, and we don't want to be just like our head under the rock or totally negative. It's important for people to be educated and to have information about the world. But the stuff we get off the internet, most of it, honestly, most of the internet is crap. Most of, like, I used to work in the news business. All the good journalists got fired. There's very few places that people get paid well to gather and process information in a rational way. So, you know, someone is like, the difference between something like the New York Times and Fox News, there's no difference here. Yes, they both have a political bent, but the New York Times this is a good source of knowledge. It goes back hundreds of years. Yes, it has problems, but it's not a bunch of, you know, a wealthy person trying to influence the politics with propaganda.
No.
So being able to judge what is good information or not, but also to realize there's good stuff in the world happening, including outside the door. News in and of itself is something strange. Normal is people being nice, pretty nice to each other, being polite to each other in all different cultures all over the world, right?
Right.
Helping the little old lady up the stairs, or, you know, just, you know, going to your kid's soccer game, or
I think it's just a matter of balance, like having good balance and boundaries, and removing yourself from the crazy. And when so the way, you know, to stay sane in this insane or this crazy world is I think is to keep a foot in reality. Remember, like you said, the people that are around you, your family, the things that are happening right outside your door, and how does that impact things. But it's so easy to get caught up in a cause and become just fanatical about it.
Fanatical. Could you describe
no good.
Fanatical? What would you do? How would you define fanatical?
I think it's somebody who is obsessed with whatever their definition of reality is. I think they're obsessed with whatever it is that their stance is, to the point where
obsession.
That's all that they think of, and there's no rational thought anymore.
Right. Or what happens, I see with a lot of people, and this is based upon your premise, you can have excellent logic, but if your premise is flawed, doesn't matter. Right? I mean, because some people get really upset with the example I like to use is somebody get really upset. There's something they can't do. They get upset about something they can't change. Like, I'm really angry that the sun doesn't rise in the west. It should rise in the west. And all this research I've come up with on the internet, because I bet if you looked on the internet, you can find someone that agrees with you, and you'll find a whole group of people that agree with you. But no matter what you do about it, the sun ain't gonna rise in the west unless everyone, you know, change the compass directions. Which is kind of random. But, you know, and if it does rise in the west, we don't really have to worry about anything, because the Earth that would pretty much end things. So that's a challenge I come across, and I think this is a big challenge in our modern world. Is people we get into these groups. Whilst it's good to be with like-minded people, it's also good to be around people who are not like-minded, right? And to spend time with people who don't agree with you. You don't have to hate someone just because they disagree with you.
No.
Because they have a different political point of view, or that's about the culture stuff. If we're always around the people that just agree with us, we don't learn anything new, and it just becomes this. All the phrases I can think of now are just foul. I shouldn't say in the air. So it's bad. My self-editing software that my wife Shino installed just went, nope, can't say that one. Nope, can't say that one.
Well, I think that we all have to do a little check on ourselves. And when I post something on Facebook, when I forward a video or something, I have friends and followers on Facebook who don't agree with me on things. Mm-hmm. For example, in the United States, certainly the having a weapon is a big deal. You know, having a gun is a big deal. People they have true beliefs. Either they think all guns are bad or all guns are awesome and we all should have a gun. So when I post something that says and it's my belief that I think that that there's really not a reason to have a gun in a home. If you need a gun in your home, I would really question what kind of home you're in. But that's my personal belief. And so I might post something about that or a video or whatever. And then there might be a comment from one of my followers or friends who is all about the guns. And so I post that not to start an argument, but for healthy discussion. And there may be some healthy dialogue that happens between the two of us, or other people join in on the dialogue. I think that's healthy. I think that's really healthy. Some people get mad and they'll say, I'm just deleting you. I'm getting rid of you because you don't think like I think, so I'm erasing you. I think that can be dangerous.
I think that to the question, and we can't really jump into that right now because we only have 4
minutes.
No, well, actually, in general, I think that how in society, because this cultural divide is not just in the United States. It's all over the world. There's this people are going, and it has to do with our living in this world of rapidly accelerating change. The civilization is going through this massive change right now. It doesn't have to be Armageddon. It doesn't have to be. But there are people that want to make Armageddon happen. There are people that the guy who's now the Secretary of State of the United States believes that the whole, crazy version of the last book of the Bible, and that we're going to help make this happen. So how do you do that? We want to separate people. We want to divide people. I think most people agree on 80 to 90% of stuff. We don't have to, but there's people that are stirring the pot that want to divide us. How do we get people to communicate, as you said, to have a healthy discussion without it going into the screaming, yelling matches? I mean, it's a big challenge, and I think that it would be a good thing in society for us to get this to happen.
Yeah,
and
to learn.
Accept that, diversity is good, and diversity of opinion is good. It'd be boring if we all believe the same thing. We're not robots.
Well, yeah, I think people have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Comfortable with being uncomfortable. Okay, I'm looking at our time here. Dun, 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 dun. We have
we had any good comments today, Paul?
We may have had some. Robert
has been chatting to us today.
We had Robert and Nishi and Sonia.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm not really doing very well in doing the comment section because I'm focusing on the discussion, so I can't really multitask. So
that's all right.
That's all right. So Frances,
yes.
We're coming out of time. So so you're a psychiatric nurse practitioner. You have a practice online. How can people contact you?
Well, right now, the very best way to get a hold of me would be through my email. And that's Frances, FRANCES, at precisionmentalperformance.com.
Okay. Frances, like the country France with an S at the end, at precisionmentalperformance.com.
Correct.
And real briefly, what is a psychiatric nurse practitioner? What is a psychiatric nurse practitioner?
I'm an advanced practice nurse, and so that basically means that for the psychiatry realm, I do therapy much like a psychologist, and I prescribe medications much like a psychiatrist.
Okay. And you're licensed in Washington and Oregon State, correct?
Correct. And then I see people online in those two states and also internationally.
Internationally. Okay. All right, great. Thank you very much. So Frances Robbins, you can also
Yes.
probably just Google that. Maybe you'll come up.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Yvette. I see it on the comments.
All right. All right, great. Thanks. Thanks. Actually, Neshi, we all know her as Neshi. She's running
Oh,
Carnations.
well, thank you, Neshi.
Okay, and my name's Paul Crouse, and I'm a spiritual teacher, advisor, and life coach. You can contact me at paulcrouse.com. Just go to my website, or you can go to paul@paulcrouse.com, or you can find me here on Facebook. All right. Well, thank you again, Frances. As always, it's a very interesting discussion, and I hope there was information that people can use in their daily lives.
Yes, yes.
I love and accept myself just the way that I am.
That's right.
Right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.